Welcome everyone to this webinar hosted by the Chicago Charter Association. For those who don't know me, I'm Louise Dobler, project manager at the Global Maritime Forum, and in this capacity managing the Chicago Charter Association. On behalf of all the signatories, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to join this webinar today. It's lovely to see a lot of familiar names in the room. I'm extremely pleased to see that all of you have joined. We're hosting this webinar for you and other companies that are interested in the Chicago Charter to shed a bit more light on what's the process internally for signatories or companies to join the Chicago Charter and how signatories then work with the Chicago Charters in their respective organizations. So we'll touch upon a bunch of topics on the onboarding, data collection and processing, relationship with the ship owners, benefits of being a signatory, and many more. But we'll not touch upon technical question on the methodology during the webinar that we'll be happy to address separately by email or on one-on-one calls, myself, Anna, and the technical advisors. Few words on house rules. We are recording this webinar, as you might have noticed. This is so that we're able to share it with other interested companies who didn't make it today. You're not able to see each other participants in the other participants in the webinar except for the speakers, and this is so to guarantee your confidentiality. I'll be the moderator for this session, and I'm pleased to be joined by 3 signatories today who are willing to share their views, experience, and best practices. We've prepared a set of questions for them based on the most frequently asked question that we receive in the Secretariat, but please feel free to use the Zoom chat function, which I'm sure you all very well know how to use, if you have any additional question that you'd like to bring up to them. And I'll do my best to bring them up into the conversation if time allows. But so before we get to this discussion with our 3 guest signatories, I'd like to welcome Jan Dilleman, President of Cargill Ocean Transportation, leading freight trading organization, in the agricultural sector, headquartered in Switzerland. Jan is the chair of the Chicago Charter as well. He's been central in leading the association and also the initiator of the project and led basically the entire drafting group throughout the development phase. So over to you, Jan.
Thank you for that, Louise. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Great to see 25 different companies actually showing interest in the Chicago Charter, which I think is just great to see after basically a full year of us really being on the road. So I really wanted to give a little bit of a background on how we got here and what the reason was for us coming up with this initiative. And then we can go into a little bit more of the specific questions, as Louise said earlier. So where it all started basically was in 2018 when the IMO came out with the 50% reduction target for 2050. And I know that this is already being debated, right? So we're only 3 years later and this is already being debated again, but it was a milestone, I think, announcement that was really kicking off a lot of things, also within the Global Maritime Forum. So the first that what happened was that there was this initiative called the Poseidon Principles, which was really focused on the owners and was really basically the banks willing to look at their portfolio and the carbon footprint that had. So they came up with a way of measuring that, so at least they could actually make some informed decisions going forward on where basically to deploy the capital. As soon as we were looking at that, very quickly there was this notion that there was something missing of the role of the charter in all this, and you can call it the charter, you can call it the end user, but it was clear that that was somehow missing. And the language that was coming out of the IMO was also very much aimed at the owner. So we have the CII and all these other things, which as an end user with a lot of commitments on decarbonization ourselves has been a little bit of a challenge to see actually what actually does it mean for us. So we really saw that there was a gap between how you actually standardize the measuring of emissions and how you hold people accountable, and also to do it in a way that actually makes sense somehow for reporting purposes if you're an end user. So we really started to work on this in this project through the beginning of the pandemic. Actually, it was quite amazing how much progress we managed to make in that period. And we started in the beginning of 19. We had a drafting group, and I'll show you a little bit the people which were involved there. We were seeking some advice from other people, and very quickly came to the conclusion that this was going to have some legs, and we should really go out with this. So we launched it in 2020 during the online GMF forum, and we got quite a lot of traction there. Since then, we've been holding a host of webinars. We had a lot of follow-up. We had a lot of intermediate meetings already with the signatories, and we've already made some amendments, and I would even call them improvements to the charter as we go. So let's move a little bit on to the next page here. And you can see here who was actually been involved there. So the drafting group you can see on the left. So we really try to have a group of people that could help us progress. We also had very good support from UMass and from Smart Freight Center, who have actually done a lot of work, not only in the maritime world, but also in other transport sectors, which was really helpful for us to draw the principles. Um, we had a lot of consultation, and where we're sitting today is we have the 25 names here on the right, which have basically signed up, and now it's really becoming what I find interesting. It's becoming really a topic that people are talking about. So whenever I'm in a conference or whenever I talk to people around decarbonization, the whole Sea Cargo Charter comes up very quickly. And we're also seeing a lot of people who have been developing services and products around the Sea Cargo Charter, which I think is interesting to see, and also shows that this is starting to become the way of measuring and reporting emissions for the maritime space. So I think it gives a little bit of a background on why we're here. We have hooked up everything so far to the IMO kind of goals. So it's the 50%. It is the way the IMO is looking at the reductions trajectories. It's also looking at the conversions, taking that from the IMO, and that is something that over time might change. And there's a lot of discussion around ambition, but for now we really hooked up to the IMO because the IMO is basically the thing that is most known in shipping as the reduction trajectory. So we really wanted to make sure that we were ambitious, we were transparent because that's going to be key, but also making sure that we stick to something that the industry actually knows. So that's why we stick to the IMO, and that's the basic for the Sea Cargo Charter. So with that, Luis, I think I can give it back to you, and let's get going into more of the details.
Thank you so much, Jan. So I'd like to introduce our three speakers of today in addition to Jan. We try to have a good representation between dry and wet, but also in terms of the pathway on how signatories are treating the data in order to bring some different perspectives into this meeting. So first and foremost, we have Eman Abdallah, Global Operations and Supply Chain Director at Cargill Ocean Transportation. Eman is working closely with Jan and also active in the technical committee. With us is also Sebastian Rush, who is head of shipping technical department at Total Energies, a French multinational oil and gas company and one of the 7 super major oil company. Sebastian was also part of the drafting group developing the Sea Cargo Charter and currently involved in both the technical committee and steering committee of the association. And last but not least, we're also joined by Eva Birgitte Bisgaard, Chief Commercial Officer at Maersk Tankers, Danish headquartered pool company managing over 230 vessels. And Eva is also part of the steering committee of the Sea Cargo Charter Association. So thank you so much for the three of us for joining this webinar and being so keen to share so openly your experience with others so that they can learn from that. To get us started, I'd like to start by inviting each of you, one after the other, to maybe share a bit more about yourself, an introduction. I try to keep it as succinct as possible, but maybe you have something else that you'd like to add, and also share why you yourself and your company have decided to join the Sea Cargo Charter. What was kind of the moment, the strongest motivation factor benefit that made it that eventually you figured that you wanted to join the Sea Cargo Charter Association? So I don't know, maybe I can start with Eman.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody that's online. So what drew us to join Sea Cargo Charter? I think for us as Cargill, I can't say much because Jan has been there from day one as one of the founding members. So I think it's this very strong urge to play a role within the industry and to also represent charters and to ensure that there is transparency. Once there's transparency, I think this is the first step in the right direction for us to also hold ourselves accountable to make sure that we're making the right decisions day in and day out within our organization, within our operations to achieve our ultimate goal. So I think I think it was instantaneous, and I think it was quite spontaneous as well from us as Cargill that this is definitely the right thing to do.
Thank you so much, Emma. And you've definitely touched upon the two core principles of the Chicago Charter on transparency and accountability. Sebastian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Louise. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So why did Total Energy we joined the Chicago Charter? Well, Total Energy is a broad energy company. We share the ambition to get to net zero by 2050 together with society for our global operations. Maritime industry is no exception to this, and we actively work on improving the environmental footprint of the shipping industry. We believe Chicago Charter is a pioneering initiative that provides standard emission reporting approach and transparency that both will be paving the way for future improvement and a more sustainable shipping industry. So that's why we've decided to join the Chicago Charter to support this key sector and to support this journey towards the decarbonization of the shipping industry. That was pretty straightforward as well.
It was straightforward. Thank you, Sebastian. Eva.
Yeah, so hi everyone, and thank you also to Chicago Charter for being on board here today. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. Also basically to get the word out on the Chicago Charter. So we definitely came in because we have a strong urge basically within the whole Maersk group to be able to make sure that we're taking out emissions. And as I also said on one of the first webinars I joined, it is very, very difficult to solve for an issue if you don't really know what issue you're solving for. And I think for us, when we saw the first charter coming out here, really trying to standardize, making sure that we were all looking at emissions in the same way, was what really the key topic for us was, okay, here we have an initiative ongoing, which means that we will be able to look at standard reporting, but also then figuring out what common solutions could be, because this is a super complex issue. We're all trying to get to a zero. But I think our ability to do so really takes knowledge of where we can push and where we can actually develop the new solutions. So I think that was a very natural step for us to join. I think I'm also joining on the account of our pools, which is also somewhat different because we're really doing the reporting here, not only on our own turf, but we're doing it for all the pool partners that we have in, also making sure that then the measurements are also shared with all the pool partners. So the reach of what we're doing with the Chicago Charter actually has a further extent than only our own company. So I think in that aspect as well, I think we found it important that we would be able to extend the reach as well. So I'm so happy to be in here, and it's been a very, very good journey so far.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you to the three of you for this opening remark. Just a kind reminder for all the participants in this call, if there's any question as we go along further in this session, please just drop them in the Zoom chat, and we'll ask them to Eman, Eva, and Sebastian. So to get going, we have this room full of people from organizations that are considering joining the Chicago Charter Association, weighing out pros and cons, calculating costs, making sure they're able to meet the requirements. Can you share a bit around the internal journey, starting from when you figured that you wanted to investigate joining the Chicago Charter to the finish line of signing the document? Was there some step around involving the legal team? Did you need board approval and any other consideration that you'd like to share?
Well, I can give it a go at a start at least. What we of course had to be very careful of and really take a notice of was of course our partners, because they are basically the ones who hold the vessels that actually produce the emissions, even though run by us. So I think for us, it was important to have a look at both, okay, what are the data that we are supposed to be delivering? Where do these data come in? And then just to secure that we have an all open and transparent setup. Now we were also able to adjust our contracts with our pool partners so that we could actually allow for the opening and the sharing of the data that came in on emissions. I think that was the sort of the first step for us, was to secure that we actually had the legal foundation and also the acceptance from our pool partners to be able to join in. Other than that, I think another thing which, yeah, we should probably all be aware of is that if this is done in a manual way, it can become a very tiresome and probably also rather fault-prone journey if we're not able to draw these data out automatically, if we're not able to standardize the process of also doing so. So I think the whole setting up of our reporting system with actual automated data collection was very important for us. So we actually had huge involvement, aside from the fact with the pool partners and the legal setup. We actually went in and automated the full journey of the data, both the collection part, but also the clearing part of the data towards the Sea Cargo Charter, so that we have an automated process, making it easy for us to share the data that we have to share on a running basis.
Thank you, Eva. I think we'll dive deeper into the data collection as well in a moment. But maybe Emma and Sebastian, did you also likewise had to or engage into some conversation with business partners you usually work with prior to joining?
Yeah, I think from our side, I think the journey for us was maybe slightly easier, predominantly being a dry bulk operator, you know, controlling our fleet. Number one, we were already reporting on our emissions in our CSR report. So, you know, we had some data to begin with, but at the same time, I think what we started off with was to engage with all of the ship owners and with all of our customers, trying to explain to them, you know, that this is going to become part of our obligation going forward. What does it mean for them? What does it mean for us? And try as much as possible to bring them on board. Aside from what's in charter parties and what isn't in charter parties, I think it's to collectively bring them on board to understand that this is for, you know, the better good of the whole industry. So we started off that journey, obviously structure-wise, and in terms of organization, we also needed to make some changes. We realized that this is quite a big undertaking in terms of methodology, in terms of additional metrics, in terms of the frequency of the reporting as well. So we needed to make sure that we had the right setup internally that can support us extracting the information, analyzing the information, and reporting as well on the data. So yeah, it's obviously you know, there has been quite a learning curve, and it's an ongoing journey. And you know, month on month, we feel that, you know, the reporting has been improving, the quality of data also has been improving, and the awareness within the industry on what is Sea Cargo Charter and what is it that we're trying to achieve and why are we collecting this data is also making our life a bit easier.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Eamon. Sebastian, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, for Total Energy side, so we recognize our process when I listen to the other partners here. First of all, the accurate monitoring of our shipping emission, that was something we were already doing in the company. So that was not a big deal or something completely new to us. That's for the data collection. I believe we'll go into detail of this later on. On the other hand, generally speaking, we strongly support working together with industry partners through a collective approach. We believe it's key towards the decarbonization. So again, on this aspect, it was pretty straightforward to join the Sea Cargo, along with different various signatories and partners. Being a member of the drafting group, we had a little bit more time to think about it, I would say, 6 months. So that was a bit easier for us to make our decision in the end. I would say the challenge for big companies like us, we are carrying out shipping, chartering activities across many business entities in the group. So you need to embark and explain the methodology to a lot of different people. So that's what takes time in big organizations like us. But in the end, we decided all together to join the initiative and the CICAR.
Thank you, Sebastian. That actually brings me to my next question. That's a beautiful transition that you just offered me. Picking up on your point around organizing your team internally, how can you bring a bit of shed some light or share a bit some best practice with the others without touching upon the service providers, which we'll just come to next, around how you divided responsibility within your team, how many people does it basically take to work on that, and yeah, what are the different roles basically?
Okay, do you want me to continue?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So yeah, in terms of resource and amount of work, I would say data management is the challenge. And by data management, I mean collection, the verification of the data, the correction of the data, chasing the data when it's not coming in the first place. So all these data management thing is the challenge. And it has been a journey, I have to say, because I found it much easier today as we speak, rather than at the beginning. We have to remember when we first started as signatories to ask for every single spot voyages. We were asking the ship to send a CO2 report at the end of each voyage. There was something a bit new in the industry. There was some reluctancy and so on. So we had to engage with a lot of business partners to explain what we were doing here, what the Sea Cargo was aiming at. And it has been well received, I have to say, so far, and we continue. So I'm pretty happy to say that today, as we speak, the process is much smoother than at the beginning. We get fairly easily the data that we need in order to fulfill the Sea Cargo requirement. And the business partner, they understand what we are doing here, and they are quite happy to collaborate, I would say. So in terms of resource, yeah, data management is the main thing. And just to answer your last question in terms of HR, how many people? Again, it depends on each and every organization, I would say. For big companies like us, just to give you an idea, we do several thousands of voyages per year, so that's quite huge. And it keeps busy around, I would say, more or less one guy, one person in the office to look after this, plus all the IT and automatization stuff that are going on in parallel. But I will leave the floor to my other partners here.
Perhaps just to add to everything you said, Sebastian. So for us, maybe the one thing that I just want to make very clear is that the beginning is always the hardest part of the journey, right? It's putting in place, the system and the processes that enable us to do the reporting is the hard part. Once those are in place, then the ongoing month-to-month reporting becomes a lot more easier. For us, we started off by making a big distinction between time charter vessel, period ships, and voyage charter. So for us also, we have obviously a large number of voyages on an annual basis, and we have 2 people that are dedicated for emissions reporting in general for the whole organization. But one is focused more on period and time charter vessels, and the other one would be focused more on voyage charters. And the reason we made that distinction is because ultimately, if you're already using IMOS, then in essence, you already have a very good head start because you have the data coming in through the master's noon reports or through your operators, manually inputting the data, obviously preferably if it's being automatically fed via VessLink. But if you're using IMOS, then you can extract the data pretty quickly, especially on your period fleet, on your time charter vessels. On voyage charter, obviously, there are a lot of correspondences need to go with the owners, trying to ask them to provide you for the information and for the ballast legs as well. So this we found is quite time consuming, and it definitely required a dedicated resource for it. So, but overall, once we have the system in place and the process in place, we collect our data ourselves, we verify the data, we have to clean it up as well. And then we extract it into Excel, and through Power BI, we can analyze the data and take it from there, not just for the purpose of reporting, but also for the purpose of ensuring that, this sustainability culture is embedded within the organization and it's part of our day-to-day decision-making. But this is on a high-level basis, the setup that we've put in place. Eva?
Yeah, so I'll jump in here as well. So it's you're making it hard for me to come up with new stuff here. So I think a lot of the stuff that has been ongoing in the different organizations, I think is very right, as you say, Man, that is actually the beginning is tough because you're trying also to figure out where are the touch points of the data sources actually. So I think the only thing that I like to add, because it sounds as though we've had very similar processes in figuring out where do the data come, how can we collect them in a common data source or a data lake, and then actually making sure that you can review the data. I think also because we were in early on in the Sea Cargo Charter, it became apparent to us that having a technical skilled person in there to actually understand what data needed to go in and how we should understand the data that came out became very apparent to us. So right now we have actually also, aside from the data people who are making sure the data run regularly and who are also checking the data and securing the governance, we have also entered technical experts in who can actually help us understand the way that we should be looking at the data and also the way that we should try to understand the setup coming from the Sea Cargo Charter. And I think it's just been an important point because that has also developed over time. What data points need to go into the reporting or how we should include different points of data. So I think technical expertise is also a strong thing to bring in on data collection, at least.
Thank you so much, Eva. Just maybe a small reminder for those listening in this call, since sometimes I've heard that it was a bit confusing. The climate alignments are calculated by the signatories themselves, meaning that the Secretariat never sees data at the voyage level for each and every single voyage. So that's all this calculation process is indeed part of the journey that the signatory carry on themselves, or some of them decide to also work with service providers. There's an army of service providers that have developed their own services to the signatories, and we'll do our best to not mention any of them so as to not favor anyone. But we basically have both two pathways, the allowed pathway, which is where signatories do everything in-house from the data collection to the calculation all the way to the end and the reporting. And we also have the preferred pathway that includes some level of data verification, but by having a third party / service provider coming into the equation, either for the whole process or just for the verification at the end. So it would be probably helpful for those in this call if you can explain which pathway you chose and why that. What is the pros and cons that led you to make this decision, and how much then you do internally within your own organization and externally. Who wants to go first?
Sure. Sure, I can start, no problem. So for us, we've chosen the preferred pathway, if you want to call it that, but with a bit of a unique setup, because as I mentioned before, we collect our own data, we clean our own data, we verify our own data, we apply the methodology ourselves, and we do our own reporting. The only reason why we use a service provider is just for verification purposes. And we felt that this gives us this added level of scrutiny, which always ensures that we are adopting the right methodology, that we have consistency across our data collection points. But at the same time, we're still maintaining control of our data in-house. And that also enables us, not just for reporting purposes, but definitely to be able to analyze data right, left, and center to drive the right decision-making.
Thank you, Amanda.
Eva, do you want to follow?
Yeah, I can do so. So we chosen the same path basically as Cargo has done here. So we also had prior experience in basically collecting at least some parts of the data that go into the Sea Cargo Charter. So we had experience in doing so, and basically because we also run the journeys, we will have the data at hand, and we are used to handling the data. For us as well, it is important that the data that we collect here can be used for other purposes. It can even be to share with the partners so that they can go in and have a look at any actions that they would like to take on their vessels in order to improve their emission setup. So I think for us, it's been important that we collect our own data, because it's going to make ourselves, but also the whole ecosystem around the pool more insightful as to where emissions are generated, and where we can run more efficiently in order to reduce emissions.
And following up, so on Total Energy side, we have decided to use the allowed pathway to begin with, meaning that we are doing everything on our own at the moment. The reasoning behind was for us just to deeply understand what it takes to enter and implement the methodology like the Sea Cargo Charter. So Eman and Eva already touched this, but it was the same for us. We wanted to collect the data to ourselves in order really to be able to understand what we are doing here and to be able to improve in the future, to have a very deep understanding of the emission. One advantage of this, I would say, I found that was not seen at the beginning, but it proved to be true, is when we had some deep discussion with ship owners, for instance, at the beginning, there could be some reluctant to give the data. We were in a position to discuss in detail each and every voyage with this partner, because we were doing the data collection ourselves, and that really eased the discussion between them and us. There was no third party involved, and we most of the time, and we all of the time, found a happy issue and a mutual benefit answer to the discussion we were having. So that was a big point. The cons of doing everything on your own is more in terms of organization. As we spoke before, it requires some work and IT development at the beginning to do the setup. But in the end, you can gain a lot in terms of deep knowledge of your activity.
Thank you, Sebastian. There's an interesting question for you, Eman, if I can take you on the spot. Someone's asking you if you've ever seen some discrepancies between your own data report and the verification that then is done by the third-party service provider you work with. And if so, how did you solve that or addressed it?
Yeah, so the service that we have from the third party does not necessarily provide us with a different set of data. Instead, they are verifying our own data and making sure that we are using the right calculation methodologies. So the discrepancy wouldn't necessarily come from that service provider, but perhaps to answer the question a bit in a wider context, do we sometimes have discrepancies between different sets of data that we are receiving from different parties, master, owner, agent, et cetera, et cetera? The answer would be definitely yes. And you know, we've gone into this knowing that we don't necessarily have all the data, and we don't necessarily have 100% accurate data, but at least we know for a fact that, you know, we're doing our best to present the most accurate data as much as possible. Again, if we are operating the vessel, this is fairly straightforward. There are no issues there. But if we're not, and we're dependent on what we are being given by the owners on voyage charter or you know, or on ballast legs, then we try to use you know, different approaches to verify that the data that we are receiving is as accurate as possible. And in some cases, we have to make estimates. Yes, we sometimes have to make estimates.
Thank you, man. I think that speaks also to the numerous discussions that we've had with inside of the association, just acknowledging the fact that the quality of the data is not 100% so far, but that's only by pushing it and asking more and more for it and continuing over time, having more people asking for it, that the quality will increase over time. So that's also part of the process.
Absolutely. And what Sea Cargo Charter has done is that it has allowed us to start the conversation, to initiate the conversation, right? And to broaden the understanding within the industry. And, you know, I don't want to jump the gun, but also the introduction of the clauses and so forth, but I'll let you carry on and then we can cover that point.
Well, that's again a brilliant transition. I was about to come to that. We have the first disclosure report that is going to be issued the next spring on 2021 climate alignment for all the signatories. So if you can share anything around the data collection so far, you've touched upon it a little bit already, but as Iman you just alluded to, are you using the C-Cargo Charter clause that is recommended, not mandatory? And how is it picking up with the business partners you work with? Are they reluctant or keen to work with it? And then around more the quality of the data that you receive, how's the quality? If you can also a bit elaborate around that and how you treat probably missing data as well. What's the kind of, are you going back to the different business partners to ask for missing data, or how do you handle that basically?
Yeah, thank you, Louise. So I'll start off with the C-Cargo Charter clause, and obviously in the beginning, and I'm sure this is the case for everybody, right? You know, your trading team and your commercial team, they're like, oh, one more clause to worry about, one more thing for me to negotiate. Do I really have to, you know? And it takes a bit of time to get them on board and for them to have, you know, to have those difficult conversations and to explain why we're doing it. So first, we started off by first educating our own chartering team, our own trading team on what is C-Cargo Charter, why is it important, and why is it that they have to push to ensure that these clauses are in our CPs. And from there, so it didn't start definitely from day one. I have to admit, it took us a good couple of months until, you know, we started seeing that, yes, the clauses being embedded in the charter parties, and that, you know, there is less and less reluctance internally as well as externally. Once the clauses started making their way into the CPs, we also started recognizing and realizing that the flow of information and of the data is becoming a lot more seamless. And when it comes to accuracy, that's a different topic, right? But at least we're on the right track, and at least the flow of information and the flow of the data is coming in. So that was definitely very useful. We continue to push, and we continue to encourage, and we continue to explain the benefits of having these clauses. And obviously we're aiming to include them and to implement them in all of our CPs. So to have 100% implementation as much as possible. Our lights here, they close off automatically, and it's something that, so if you see me waving, no, I'm not going crazy. I'm just trying to turn the light back on. But anyway, it's not going on. So
oh,
there we go.
There you are.
Yes. So yeah, when it comes to the forms, now considering the size of the voyages, what, 5,000 voyages, we can't do it on a manual basis, and we can't use the forms for all of our voyages. We try as much as possible to depend on Vestlink and IMOS and, you know, the automated process that we have in place. But when and if for owners or for customers or whoever it is, if they're not on IMOS for any reason, then we obviously go to the forms and we use them. And we know that the technical team is working on simplifying the forms as much as possible to make them also more user-friendly. So both have been quite helpful, and both just complement the journey as we go along.
Thank you, man. If I really like to come in.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so I think, I think, so you mentioned IMOS, Iman, and I think it's just a very important part. So having also spoken to other companies, you know, looking to join, I know that there is and can potentially be an issue out there with legacy IT systems, and that can really complicate the process. So at least I think that where we have seen that things move really easy and quickly, and we are ourselves in IMOS, which means that we've been able to collect these data for quite a lot of parties that aren't in IMOS already and might have at least a legacy setup. So I think it's been very good, and it is the thing to recognize that then the newer your IT stack really is, the more easy the reporting and also the ability to transport and collect the data has actually been. So I think for some of us, this process has been easier than it probably has been for others. Given that we are basically collecting on everybody else's behalf, and that we will typically, if we're sending it to a charter party, it is data that we will be sharing. I think our situation is a little bit the other way around compared to Eman's, which means that for us it's actually been a good journey. We're more easily been able to look into the data, but I think the piece about missing data and the running focus on securing that the data are actually going into the data pack is actually rather important, because there can be breaches in the actual flow of data in the IT systems. I think being able to secure that and at least have a monitoring of how data flows has been important for us. So legacy systems can complicate the process, and then also just the awareness of an ability to check if data is coming in is important.
And just to build up on what Emma and Eva has just said, so we covered the CP clause and the suggested template. It is up to each organization, I guess, to see how that fits into their existing system, because I believe a lot of you are already monitoring the emissions in a way or another. So that would have to fit into this one. But the nice thing is that in the methodology, there is a template available that you may use, or you may take a lot of good ideas from. So we touched the CP clause, the template. There will be also maybe the voyage order when you talk to the ship as a charterer. That would have to be adjusted as well. But basically, with these three things, you are good to go and good to implement the Sea Cargo Charter.
Thank you, Sebastian. This is actually the clause and the templates. Maybe it's useful to give a bit some history around that. These were some wishes of at least the clause was a wish from the companies involved in the drafting group. So that's how we basically developed it, based on some of the drafting group members who already had very similar clauses. And then the template was also a desire from data collection template was also a desire from the members. So that's what the technical committee has developed over the last few months. So that's also basically to reflect that this is an ongoing journey, and we basically add pieces to the puzzle to just make it better and better over time as we identify kind of rooms for improvement. But maybe now around, so now that you have all this data and building basically a big database of how a given journey is influencing positively or negatively your climate alignment and in general your sustainability performances, can you talk a bit about how you're monitoring your climate alignment? Is it on an ongoing basis or at some specific point in time? And can you already drag some or make some observations and draw some learnings from that that you're maybe already incorporating in your decision making for future activities?
Sure. So, I mean, from our side, we take a snapshot of the report on a monthly basis, and we analyze it and we review it internally, and we try to derive certain conclusions from these reports. Some of the things that we have noticed is that obviously, you know, how we are performing is sometimes obviously market driven. And it's something that, you know, that we don't have that much control over. So, you know, and this year was a perfect example of, you know, how the market behaved and how all of the ships were going at maximum speed to maximize earnings as much as possible. And obviously this did not, you know, come in our favor on an emissions perspective. Instead, it was quite a big disadvantage. That's one thing. Being mindful that there are certain things that, you know, could influence in the end our emissions, we also need to make sure that we're also taking the right decisions elsewhere, whether it be by parceling, whether it's by reducing ballast legs as much as possible, by maximizing intake. So, and it's in the end, it's a fine balance. Everybody we're all in you know, in this business to, you know, to make earnings in the end, but at the same time, how can you have dual objectives? Yes, I want to hit my targets financially, but you know what? For a change, I need to also hit my target on emissions. and make sure that, you know, that there is at least some progress month in and month out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iman. Eva, would you like to come in?
Yeah, so we're looking to do some of the same. We haven't, as of now, yet introduced into the chartering decision making, which would be a natural place also to go. But where we are using the emission data is very much on the operational side. So, so what becomes important here is also for us to be able to run according to the most optimal plan. We also have other digital tools that help us do so. But the way that you operate a vessel, the way you choose the route, the way you choose your speed, also according to weather, are very important parameters that that we will always carry on with us. So I think that journey for us started before we actually joined the Sea Cargo Charter, but it's a journey that we're continuing, and we're continuing to look at it. We think it's hugely important to sort of accept that within the operational setups, there's also a lot to do. It's not only on the fuel side and the vessel side, there is a lot to do within how we operate vessels, about how you take chartering decisions, but also how you then operate the voyage that you'll be carrying the ship on. So that is mainly where we will be using also the data, and also want to see the emissions being brought down over time.
Thank you, Eva. Sebastian, anything?
Yeah, on our side, you know, today with the digital tools that are available, you can have your score evolving live every day. Every time a voyage is ended, it's computed into the system, and the score is moving. So then it's up to each organization to decide at which interval they want to sit down and have a look at it. Every month, every quarter, depending on your business. What's important, I believe, is to look at it over time to see how it evolves and how you improve the performance. What has been very useful so far, and from the first month, I would say, is to identify the various contributions from different voyages and to see the big discrepancies actually between a big voyage with a big ship that has a weight in the total performance that is maybe 20-30 times the one of a small voyages. So you can immediately see where it is the most efficient to act if you want to improve your fuel efficiency and the environmental performance. So that's already from the beginning. You can immediately see with the methodology where are the big and the low-hanging fruit, I would say. So that's the first learning we have.
Thank you so much to the three of you. There's a few questions that have been that were in the chat, and I'm actually gonna call on you, Jan, if that's still okay. Maybe just to start with, there was a question around service provider, whether Sea Cargo Charter members are using purely bespoke internal solutions or off-the-shelf products customized to their needs. So most of them who are working with service providers that I know of have developed kind of, there's a standard service, and then basically develop their own service or tailored service around that offering from the service provider. But we'll make sure not to mention any there, because we have at heart not to support or list, to not do a list of accreditation of service provider just because there's a million around there in the space, and that's not the purpose. So each signatory is free to work with any of the providers they want to work with. But so Jan, the reason why I wanted to bring you in is there's a question also around smaller owners, smaller companies. So the question goes, how do you see the Sea Cargo Charter develop among smaller owners and operators that don't necessarily have the scale and in-house expertise as many of the current signatories?
No, I think it's a good question, right? And I think, and this is an interesting development that we've seen over the last couple of months, I would say. When we designed the Sea Cargo Charter, it was really focused on the end user. And what we're seeing is more and more people are actually coming from the other side, willing to be involved and also trying to find a way to create transparency on what they do themselves, right? And And the Sea Cargo Charter was not really designed for that, but we start seeing a lot more demands on that side. So we are really thinking about how we can actually help that. I do think with the smaller also end users, you could also argue that actually the collection of data is a lot easier. If you only have 20 voyages to do, it's actually probably not that difficult to get the data for these 20 voyages. So I think there's plenty of tools here to help around. We still need to think a little bit at Sea Cargo Charter, how we're going to give the owners a voice and in what kind of capacity that will be. But it's clear that there's a need from the industry to create more transparency. And we just need to make sure that we do something that doesn't only work for big companies, because that would be the wrong way.
Thank you. Yeah, most relevant. We're getting towards the end of our session. So maybe before I ask a last question to each of you, is there any point that you still have at heart and wanting to bring in this session for the others?
Yeah, I had one thing there, maybe if I can add. I heard this a couple of times so far, right? This, and I really want to underline this. This is a journey, right? This is something that we started together, and I think we're going to learn a lot, and the thing will change as we go, and also as society is going to change around the topic, and we might get some more information, new technologies, whatever. So, I think that journey aspect is very important. Um, we already knew that we had to change from the third greenhouse gas study to the fourth one, which we already did. We know that we have a bit of an issue around the ambition level on the IMO, which is probably a little bit lower than most of the people on the signatory list. And we also know that there's an issue around somehow the life cycle emissions, because the IMO is looking at operational. So we know very well that there's certain things still to cover as we go. And I think we got good vision on where that is. So I think this notion on we're on a journey, and being part of the Sea Cargo Charter also gives you a voice in shaping that, right? So I think that's an important piece. The last thing I do want to stress, what this is not, what we don't want this to be is a bit of a league table, where this is going to be a naming and shaming of people that may be higher or lower than the line, or the one might be different, because we all realize that the businesses, and I think Sebastian said this as well, if you go into the details, you learn a lot, and you see how complex this actually is. And we're all in different type of businesses, so we really need to make sure that this doesn't become a naming and shaming, but really a starting point on creating transparency, and with that creating pathways of actually improving. So I'm going to push very hard for this not to be a league table. Let's see what the press is going to do in the end, but I'm going to be willing to take that fight on. So
Thank you so much, Jan. Right, so we're getting to the end. I'll just give a very short brief around how to join and by when, but maybe a final word from each of you. If you can summarize in one word, or maybe a few words, one sentence, let's say max, why should participants on the call join the Sea Cargo Charter by the end of the year? You can, if you don't want to get your point stolen, just go first.
Sure, I can go first, no problem.
I'll go.
Go ahead, Eva.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I think it was my PC got stuck again.
Yeah.
So God. So I believe this is a hugely important point, to start joining the Sea Cargo Charter, also because in the future, come on, we are going to get regulated at this at some point in time. So if we get on board, you start getting the learnings, you start to be able to improve your systems, and you actually get the insights into how the setup is going to be working. So I think it's all about being proactive and being forefront into the future that we're looking into, and I think that's hugely important. Also by joining sort of as soon as possible, I think there is also the option, because I think that's the other important thing about the Sea Cargo Charter, which is connected to the Getting to Zero Coalition, IMO. Let's push, and I think we need to be more people to be able to push this agenda forth on the Getting to Zero. So I think there is an ability to have impact and influence. So getting the learnings out, being proactive, and having impact and influence already today, which I think are just hugely important factors.
Eman, do you want to be next?
Sure. I'm just gonna say it very, 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 very briefly. there's only one way for us to reach our common goal and our common objective, which is together. Only together can we, and I'm going to take this from our own goal, can we make zero carbon shipping a reality. So we have to go on this journey together. And by signing up to Sea Cargo Charter, you take the first step on the journey so that collectively we can adopt the same methodology, we have transparency, and we start holding each other accountable for the role that we're playing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Yeah, fortunately, some points are remaining for me, so I can. No, we see Sea Cargo Charter as a great opportunity for the shipping industry to collectively understand every corner of its emission, and this deep knowledge will guide and will drive an efficient improvement over time. So this is the only way to go forward and to be efficient. I see also this as a great opportunity for a ship owner that is putting highly efficient ship on the water. To see that this efficiency and it actually has a strong value for the charterer itself, because he knows that the charterer will be monitoring effectively this performance, will be disclosing this environmental performance. So it also shows that the charterers, there is an appetite for efficient vessel to go more and more in the future. So that's a nice tool also to trigger and improve the overall fleet of the vessel. The charterer will be there to charter them. So the more signatories will support the Sea Cargo Charter, the more transparency it will bring to the sector, the more visibility and the better knowledge we will get all together about our emissions, where they are, and how to improve them. That's why I would like to encourage you to join us.
Thank you. Jan, would you like to have the last word?
Yeah, I will be a bit cheeky and I will not answer this question, but I'll say why to join now, and maybe that is maybe an interesting way to close. And I think first of all, the momentum around this topic is ever increasing, right? We're just coming off COP26. We have a lot of other things there, and I think everybody is coming with their goals, and it's great that people come up with goals, but we're not going to get there if we're not creating transparency. So I think it's a very logical time to now go into the signatory. I think the one is that if you look at the calendar, it's actually a great time to sign up, because if you sign up now, you're basically going to start reporting as of January, right? So you start gathering as of January for the whole year and then report actually after, which is basically making it a lot easier than joining in 6 months and you have to somehow get all the data from the previous 6 months. So I think also timing wise, this is from a pure operational point of view, this is a great time to join. So I hope this has helped people to understand a little bit more, and I'm sure we can take questions offline if there's any specifics. And I hope we're going to see more of you on the list of signatories going forward here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jan.
There's one last question that just came in, and I think we should take the last minute to answer. And I'll leave it up to Jan, perhaps, to answer this one. What is the risk to be publicly named if we are below the target?
Yeah, so we had a long discussion around what do we do, right? Are we measuring and not going out and all that? So what we said is we're going to go out with the names, because I think not doing the disclosure is probably going to undermine the whole thing. So we said, no, we need to be out there. As I said earlier, I don't want this to be a name and shame. We have seen this also with the Poseidon principles, where there was actually some people outperforming the trajectories tremendously, and some of them were very much above it. And it was also just because it was a learning, and there was some vessel category kind of differences, etc., etc. But I think what we will need to do is keep on explaining to people that every business is different. And the last thing I want to see is people getting penalized for being transparent. And I think that is the thing that we need to keep on getting out there, that transparency should not be used just to penalize people. But there is always a risk. But then again, I think what we've said, and Iman knows this very well from me, is like I'm much rather be transparent myself than somebody else trying to be transparent on our behalf. So I much rather be really transparent and have something to explain and have a real good dialogue around that, then you have to come in from the defensive mode. So that's another angle to that.
Thank you so much, Jan, and everyone. I'll make it very quick because we're just 1 minute past the hour. But I'd really like to thank the four of you for joining and sharing so openly. Hope these inspiring few words have inspired and urged the participants in the call to join. Very quickly on the process of how to become a signatory, there's 3 documents to be filled in and completed, but we'll make sure that we share that with you and also more information just as a follow-up to this meeting. All the other resources on the methodology and whatnot are available on the Chicago Charter website. I'd like to thank all the 4 of you, Anna Jilkova, my colleague, who helped making this webinar a reality, and all of you listening in the webinar. And maybe as you're leaving, if there's any other question that is popping up in your head that you'd like us to address, please leave it in the chat as you're leaving the call, and we'll make sure to follow up with you one-on-one by email. And with that, wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and stay safe, and hope to see you joining very soon. Goodbye.